Hello and welcome to the Matt and Phreds Speakeasy podcast. My name is Claire Turner and I run our little family business with my sister, our parents and the wonderful Matt and Phreds team, two of whom are running the podcast show. David Smith Jr. and Ed Gallyot will be chatting to some of the wonderful musicians who play at the club here in Manchester. They'll be discussing musical inspirations, songwriting techniques and hearing a little bit about what makes each of the musicians tick. If you can, please visit the Matt and Phreds website at mattandphreds.com. Phreds is spelt with a PH, and check out our online shop. There's loads of goodies to buy, of which money will go towards helping musicians who have lost all of their gigging income during this COVID-19 lockdown. So, without further ado, over to you, David and Ed. Enjoy the show.
Lovely indeed. Hello and welcome to another episode of Speak Easy, the Matt and Phreds podcast. My name is David Smith Jr. and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, Ed Gallyot. How are you today, Ed?
I'm very well, thank you, David. I'm feeling pretty cheesy today. Ready to make some terrible banter.
Oh Lord, I regret that almost immediately. Let's move on. Who are we talking to today, Ed?
We are talking to Lucy from the Chanteuse. She has some brilliant French music, brilliant influences. We learned a lot from the chat, didn't we? And we're excited for everyone to hear it.
Yeah, it was. We talked about this a little bit, but it's very much one of those situations where you think you know quite a lot about music, and then we talked to Lucy, which you'll hear in a moment, and it turns out we really didn't know anything at all.
And there's a whole world to explore. Get your notepads out. There's a whole bunch of influences, from string arrangers to composers to lyricists. Yeah, it's a educational episode of Speakeasy, one might say.
One might say that, and one might also say that we have a recommended track this week that is currently serenading our listeners beneath our jibber jabber.
It is serenading it beautifully, and the track is Something Deadly by Origami Tsunami. I know these guys really well, and they've been rocking out for about 2 or 3 years now, and they've got mathy guitars, they've got poppy choruses with John's got these King Cruelly vocals. It's well worth a listen. They got stuff out on Spotify, and they were getting the gigs lined up, and I'm sure once we're all back and it's safe to be back, they'll still be getting gigs lined up, and you can go see them, which you definitely should.
I mean, it sounds like an interesting combination. Could you just run that title by me again? I really liked it.
It's Something Deadly.
Ooh. Should we have a listen?
Should be doing, but I feel like I should be
Lovely indeed. Hello, and here we are then with our guest for this week. So we're talking to, I've just realised, I actually don't know your last name.
Hope, Lucy Hope.
Lucy Hope, there we go. And we're looking at a couple of your projects today. So first we'll be looking at the Chanteuse, which is...
Good pronunciation.
Thank you, I have been practicing, I actually have. And then we'll be looking at your band as well later.
Great.
Which the name of which has actually escaped me right now. What is it?
The House of Glass.
House of Glass, wonderful. But before we do all that, how are you doing at the moment, Lucy?
Very well. The first couple of weeks of lockdown were harder because obviously all work stopped and everything was terrifying and unknown and unexpected, and I've eased into it a bit, and now I'm I don't know, I can see this becoming more and more enjoyable. It's simpler, isn't it? Life. I mean, obviously I speak as somebody who's safe and fed and not having to do anything scary or dangerous, so for me life's just become altogether calmer and simpler.
It's reminding me somewhat of summer holidays back when I was in school.
Yeah, especially like the binge watching of like Netflix dramas and duvet days.
Every day is a duvet day.
Yeah.
He's great having every day a duvet day.
Yeah, but you are right, we are very lucky to be able to say that, but it has been very surreal, hasn't it?
Really surreal, and as I say, the first few weeks were not altogether positive. It felt jarring and weird and mixed emotions, like highs and lows, and now I've just like got my head in kind of seeing only the positives of it. I've been writing loads and trying to do loads of online live gigs and making videos for people, and I've been sending videos over to a care home near my house so they can have some live entertainment, and for sort of various other places that I sing regularly I've made some videos for the regulars.
That's good.
Wow.
Keeping busy then. As busy as we can. And the occasional duvet day, of course.
There's a bit of fair few, nonetheless.
So, without further ado then, how about you give us a quick introduction to the first track that we'll be doing?
Remind me again, San Salvador.
Yes.
So the first track that we're going to play on the list is a song called San Salvador, and I thought it would be a good one to choose. It's on my album Modiano, but it's not been released yet as a single, but it kind of goes from starts off in this minor key about how overnight winter's arrived and the trees are bare, and it's kind of this depressing barren world, and then the second verse, it moves into a major key and it kind of evokes all these memories of like glorious past times where everything was in Technicolor, and it just felt perhaps quite a fitting song to choose for kind of the juxtaposition of two massively different worlds that kind of seem to have just kind of been
perhaps quite apt for our current situation.
That's what I thought. I thought that, yeah. So it's like this lost Eden that's being evoked, and it's so it's a barely there memory. You think, did that ever really exist? Did we ever go to parties? Did we ever air kiss or kind of shake hands? Like it's this half forgotten dream of a former life.
I've not heard of this author before. Was it Patrick Modiano?
Patrick Modiano, yes. He won the Nobel Prize in 2014, and he's
lovely.
He's super famous in France, very well known for, well, a lot of people say he kind of writes the same novel over and over again that's all about nostalgia and loss and this constant search for your identity.
Yes, and that's as I found in my research, is something called Modianesque.
Très bien, yes.
He's a clever boy, isn't he?
I'm just going for that teacher's pet thing, but and so these themes, of nostalgia and this sort of mysteries being uncovered, this kind of thing is resonant through all the songs as well. Through all these lyrics, and so what is it about that attracted you? What is it about those themes and ideas that you relate to, perhaps?
So he's obviously a brilliant and beautiful writer, and as you said, the Modianesque is all about these kind of gaps and lacunas and absences and the things not said. And I think I was drawn to the lyrics for that reason, because that's where the music comes in, and that's where the kind of like the silences can mean so much, or the kind of the way that you deliver something, or the way that the unspoken, I guess, is really interesting for him as a novelist who didn't, as I say, particularly consider himself a lyric writer, and kind of now is something that he doesn't boast about and doesn't mention. He kind of thinks of it as like this frivolous thing he did in his youth. It's not something he boasts or flaunts.
Just a phase.
It was a phase for writing for like the biggest publishing house in France. Yeah, biggest French artist, one of the biggest French female artists ever, Françoise Hardy. Yeah.
If only we could all have such successful follies.
Exactly.
And so this style. So you sing in the chanson style.
Yeah.
The most recognisable name, probably for our listeners, and given how localised we are geographically, is probably Edith Piaf. And we were just wondering if you could throw out a couple of the suggestions for people if they wanted to get more familiar with the style.
So for chanson, the kind of the famous singers would be Georges Brassens and Jacques Brel. Even though he was Belgian, he's famous for being a chanson singer. One of the best singers that never really made it across the channel is Barbara. We say Barbara, but Barbara is the most exquisite singer-songwriter. And Léo Ferré is also, they're like the holy, well, I would say trinity. For Brassens, Brel and Léo Ferré are the kind of trinity of male chanson singers. And then for female chanson singers, I'd go for Barbara and Piaf. So they're my recommendation.
Good luck to everyone in spelling those names when you're doing your Googling.
They'll be in the show notes.
You've heard it here first. Lucy says they'll be in the show notes.
The next tune we're doing is also on Modiano, and it's called La Complainte de Roland Garros. So La Complainte is a lament, and Roland Garros, he was actually a French aviator in the First World War, but they named the French tennis open after him, or at least the stadium. And this lament for Roland Garros is this, again, an ode to lost youth and lost time and the past. So the song talks a lot about basically tennis balls and tennis. And in 1972, they changed the colour of tennis balls from white to yellow so that they'd be picked up better on TV screens. And so it's kind of an ode to lost white balls of your youth. True. It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor, of course, and we are very immature for taking it so literally. That is on us.
Our heads will come out of the gutter one day.
not today, not yet.
So there was some great reviews for this record in our research. The Arts Desk even said they were overwhelmed by how delicious the whole thing sounds. Manchester Evening News said it was superb listening. So we just wondered if you could give us an insight into what it was like putting the record together.
So actually, the idea started off after I'd been to see Bill Ryder Jones with the Manchester Camerata it was part of the Manchester Literature Festival in 2014, and on that same day, I remember two of my very learned friends were having a conversation with each other, and I was like thinking, well, I've got very little to contribute to this, and I was like in and out, like, and I was drinking my wine, and then they said, oh, it's been a French author that's won the Nobel Prize this year, and I was thinking, oh, I might know who this is, and they were like, and I was like, Modiano, And they were like, yes, that's it. And I was like, oh my God. And then, I don't know, it was something about having been in that environment where Bill Ryder-Jones had done this thing with the Camerata. And what it was that he'd imagined a film score for an imaginary film of the novel If on a Winter's Night by Italo Calvino. And it was absolutely brilliant.
I'm definitely going to check that out once we've
it's on. I mean, it's available as a record and on Spotify. Like, it's stunning.
That's actually one of my favourite books as well. I did not know that had happened. So
check it out. Honestly, it's really, really wonderful. And so I don't know. So the second half of the concert, I was there thinking, gosh, Modiano's, and he was who I'd done my master's dissertation on. I'd written on the works of Modiano, and so I was there thinking, gosh, he'd written some songs in the 60s. Ooh. And I don't know, there was an idea that started to percolate. And then afterwards, I was speaking to someone who was involved in the Manchester Literature Festival, and they said to me, oh, maybe you should propose something that's both musical and literary. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I know exactly what I'm going to propose, because I knew that he'd written these songs in the 70s. Anyway, that project never happened, but I couldn't get it out of my head. And I got in touch with the amazing violinist and composer Fiona Bryce, and she put me in touch with a producer called Dimitri Tikovoy, who has worked with Placebo and Marianne Faithfull and The Horrors, and he's Grammy nominated, he's amazing. And wow. We worked out that we were kind of all up for making this record together, and that Fiona Bryce was going to rearrange the strings, which had been originally written by Jean-Claude Vanier. I don't know if you heard of him. He's basically the Serge Gainsbourg sound that we all adore. He is they were always partners in crime, basically. They work together on most things. He's like the seal of approval for anything kind of French pop of that era.
Briefly for our listeners, mine and Ed's faces are just as vacant as you thought they might be during that section. We had
Serge Gainsbourg, mate. I'm on to that.
Well, you've got to check out Jean-Claude Vanier's B Music and just any of his records.
These will also be in the notes, I suspect.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get some notes, because there's some essential listening that I'll be recommending.
Definitely. So Fiona Bryce, who she was sidewoman in Placebo. She played the violin in Placebo, and she's written her own album that was released on Bella Union, and she's just incredible. We went down to London. Well, they live in London, and I went down to London, and we recorded the album in a studio in Hackney called Toe Rag, which is all analogue. So there's the only thing digital in there was my phone. There was nothing, everything in there was recording to tape, and it was just this amazing experience of kind of having to do a good take and not even having to emulate that sound. There's something about recording with that apparatus and in those rooms and with that equipment that kind of gave it, I think, that kind of certain sound, that sound of that era. And so I think that's how we got that kind of particular sound on the record.
Pretty successfully, by all accounts.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the reviews. Yeah, it's been in France as well. I thought they would never kind of be open to some English girl from Stockport being trying to attempt to record their music, but they really were embracing of it and open-armed about kind of having. I think they just thought it was quite unusual that it was the other way around. We're so used to French artists covering Anglo-Saxon tunes, American tunes, British tunes, and someone of the UK perhaps doing it the other way around. Maybe it's a bit of a novelty for them. And as well, because Modiano is just massive, he's so famous over there. I think it was a bit of a Modiano had songs. It wasn't even there. It wasn't necessarily a well-known thing. So this next track is I've been in a band called The House of Glass for a few years now with my mate Lee Mann, and we're also in another band together called Heavy Salad, and that album is out this year, and we are releasing this next song on the 22nd of May. I wrote it actually I wrote the lyrics for it a long time ago, and then we were asked to contribute some songs for a horror film that was going to come out called Habit, and it's all filmed in Manchester. And they said, could you contribute something to the soundtrack? And I knew I had these lyrics, and I'd written it with another melody, but I rewrote the melody, and kind of Lee and I sat down with it and put loads of other layers on it and everything, and so it became this song that went on the soundtrack, even though it wasn't specifically written for it. And that film came out, and we got loads and loads and loads of views on it. Well, I say loads, I mean like more than I would normally get on my stuff with and we decided then, we're in lockdown now, we may as well release this song because it's been sitting on our hard drive with a whole album's worth of songs, I may add, that it's just sitting on the hard drive waiting for us to just give it some time and attention. So it's called Blue Hearts, and it's I don't know how to describe it. How would you guys describe it?
Well, we're gonna ask about that actually, because it's got a lot of interesting elements to it. And it's kind of an 80s new romantic ballad, we were sort of thinking. Would you say that's an influence
No.
on you? Or are there any surprising or guilty pleasures that are sort of influencing this style as opposed to the Chanteuse?
To be honest, this is the most romantic and kind of prettiest of our songs. Most of our stuff's quite like heavy, kind of. We started off singing very much garage rock, but with, I suppose, quite melodic, unaffected vocals on the top. Everything else, like guitars and everything, would be quite like crunchy. And then this song was our first ballad, I think. Maybe, I don't know. We've got a couple. We've also released another song which is a bit. It's strange. The two songs we've released now are both a bit ballady, but most of the stuff we play is like grim and like nasty. So
You're just saving that to surprise people later on.
Yeah. So no, there were no conscious 80s influences, but I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, so I'm sure that they're in there somewhere. I don't know. I have to say that if you the first verse with the guitar and me singing was kind of what I brought to it, and then Lee just came with all these ideas of like the percussion and like this kind of, like, it just gets a bit like sumptuous, doesn't it, when it kicks in, and that's all Lee. So apart from the piano, I do like that Russian piano bit as well that comes in. It sounds a bit kind of Russian again. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a bit
that's your European influence bleeding in there. You just can't quite escape it.
That was Lee. So Lee did all the layers of production on that, on my quite rudimentary. I guess if it weren't played on a kind of electric guitar sound, it would have been a quite folky sounding.
The magic of production.
Yes, and he's very talented at it. So yeah. So you've got to check that out, and also Heavy Salad. I've got to give them a shout out because I sing in this band, and their album's out this year called Cult Classic, I think. I need to check that. But,
We'll have a look. We'll let you plug everything again at the end, so have a quick look and make sure you're getting that right. Just a very simple question, because it occurs to me that you, in this project you're singing in English.
yeah.
Do you find there's any different techniques you use when delivering lyrics in different languages, or is it just the same game, just with different words, or what's that like?
I think not consciously do I use any different techniques. Obviously, you've got to get your mouth around the French stuff. You move your mouth in a different way when you're singing in French, but I think because a lot of this, when I'm with the Chanteuse, I'm kind of, I suppose, my kind of people I look up to have certain. It's very like, you've got to convey a very raw emotion, and it's not necessarily about the beauty of how you do that, but more the emotion. I kind of care a little bit less about kind of tune and more about texture, and not that I'm thinking about that when you're doing it, but it's probably a natural thing that you just want to be like if you've ever watched, I think it's Jacques Brel, and it's the gig is like Olympia, at the Olympia in France, in Paris, and I think it's 1969, and he does songs like Ne me quitte pas and Amsterdam, and he's basically just a man on a stage wearing a suit with a spotlight on him. It's in black and white, and he is just like mesmerising because he's sweating and he's spitting and he's shouting and like I just find something so amazing in that there's such lack of any other thing that's necessary when you're kind of like throwing your emotion like that at an audience. So I feel like with the Chanteuse, when singing the chanson live, it's very much more about like, because it's all the songs as well are like about like sailors with syphilis and death and love and being really so drunk you can't even see. Like the lyrics as well are like pretty just like bodily and physical, and
everyone sat in the audience thinking it's sort of a love song, and they're saying that.
Yeah, that's the same with Amsterdam. I remember I sang at a friend's party a few years ago, and I sang Amsterdam by Jacques Brel, and afterwards someone came up to me and said, "Oh gosh, you were amazing, wasn't that lovely?" And I was like, "Lovely? Like if you think it was lovely, I've not communicated this well, because I'm singing about sailors pissing on whores."
And there's the explicit tag. We got it.
We got there in the end. We pushed for it.
Every week we get so close, but every week there it is.
Happy to oblige. It's because I've like had half a beer now.
Ed, have you got anything else to ask about Blue Hearts or about anything in general?
No, I don't think I've got anything else to say other than thank you so much for doing the interview with us. It's been very insightful. I just could you give what was the Bill Ryder Jones thing called?
I think if you look on, say for example, if you're looking on Spotify, it will just be if ... The novel is called If on a Winter's Night, and it's Italo Calvino, but I think the album's just called If ... And
amazing book.
Yeah, and it's an imaginary films, right, because there is no film, so he's imagined a film score for an imaginary film, and it's
there you go. I've just found it.
Good. If you could send that to me, Ed, as well, that'd be brilliant. So so Lucy, before we go, is there anything that you'd like to plug one last time, and if anybody's looking for you, where can they find you?
I've tried to shoehorn them in already, so if you would like to check out The Chanteuse, it's at www.thechanteuse.co.uk. I have records and wares to sell. I'm on Instagram at _Chanteuse, and Facebook as The Chanteuse, and Twitter _Chanteuse. The House of Glass, we're on Spotify, as is The Chanteuse. And as I say, we've got our record Blue Hearts coming out on the 22nd of May. And we're going to be making a video between now and then, something in isolation, so God knows how it will end up, because we're going to be doing it separated from one another.
Quarantine horror movie parts.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Get out the tomato ketchup. And let me just double check. So you need to check out my best mates are all in a band called Heavy Salad, and I sing backing vocals in that band too. We've got loads coming up this year, or we did have loads coming up this year. Hopefully that will still happen. So you need to check them out. Heavy Salad Sounds on Instagram, and the album is called, I think it's Cult Classic. Let me see if I can get it on a message quickly.
We've got that drum roll, don't worry. We're keeping everyone in suspense.
Let me get the WhatsApp group up.
There's a little plug for WhatsApp there as well, all right.
Well, when all this madness is over as well, me and David have both been lucky enough to see you live at the club as well, and anyone who's listening, just definitely come round and check it out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can't find it. Let me just check one last time. Oh, found it. Cult Casual. Heavy Salad, Cult Casual. That album's out later this year. We've recorded it in Sheffield. Some of it in Sheffield with Ross Orton, he produced Arctic Monkeys AM, and
Nice.
Christoph as well, who's a Manchester-based producer. So we've done it with both of those producers, and there's some tunes on there.
if you do say so yourself, some absolute
I didn't write them.
tunes.
I can absolutely say how ace it is, because I'm not boasting about myself. I'm boasting about my mates Lee Man and the rest of the Heavy Salad crew, who are all mega.
Well, this has also been mega. Thank you very much for
My
joining
pleasure.
us.
Good questions as well. I made me think and forget my thoughts.
Which admittedly might not be the best thing for a radio interview. But
I'm relying on your good editing.
Well, thank you very much anyway, and we'll
Thank you
hopefully
so much.
we'll get to see you at Matt and Phreds again very soon.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
That was just lovely, wasn't it, Ed?
That was fantastic. It was great to hear all the stories, wasn't it? From Lucy and how she's found the lyrics, how she's got influenced by the style. You know, like we said, we thought we knew so much about the music, but we have so much to learn.
There's always more to learn. There's always more to learn, and it's there's always more to learn, Ed. But unfortunately, we can't do any more learning today.
No, I think learning time is well and truly over, because it's that time that we come to every week, sad as it is, that we have to say goodbye.
Au revoir.
To you, our listeners. I don't know how to say that in French, unfortunately.
We'll look it up for next week. So first, I think if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to get in touch with us, we do have an email address. It's speakeasy@mattandphreds.com. That's Phreds, of course, with a PH. Do get in touch. Give us correct our pronunciations, because I'm sure we've messed quite a few of those up, if you'd like, or tell us about your own interests in music that maybe me and Ed haven't heard of. Yeah.
And if you like what you've heard and you want to check out more, you want to find more of these wonderful episodes, I don't mean to blow my trumpet too much, but
Oh no, blow away, Ed. Blow right away.
well, you can find them at buzzsprout.com/speakeasy. You can find them at the Matt and Phreds website at mattandphreds.com/podcast. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Music. There's Apple Podcasts, I think. And, you know, there's loads of places. You can find us anywhere. We've got fantastic. I think this is our 8th episode, isn't it? We're getting up to the 10th anniversary. It's getting brilliant, isn't it?
You can find us anywhere. Look out the window, you know. There we are. Check in your garden.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
Yeah, we wouldn't step inside. We'll stay 2 meters apart. But, you know.
But, you know, we're there for you if you need us. And speaking of people that we've needed, it's time to say our thank yous. So, first, I'd like to thank Claire Turner, of course, for doing our intro and for giving us this opportunity. I'd like to thank Will Mackenzie for the use of his fabulous jazz in between the tracks.
I'd like to thank Origami Tsunami with Something Deadly being our local recommended track of the week.
And, of course, we'd like to say a merci beaucoup to Lucy Hope, the Chanteuse, for just putting up with our terrible banter.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for being on the Speakeasy podcast. And that is it for us. Thank you if you've made it this far. Thank you for putting up with our terrible, terrible banter.
Listening to our strange meanderings at the end of an episode.
Where, you know, it kind of goes off track and we haven't really figured out how to end it. So we just keep on talking and they probably fade out now. Starting. Slow fade. The slow fade. You can kind of hear what we're saying.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye. Till next time. Goodbye.